Hey you guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to be doing something super fun. I always say that, don't I? We're going to have tons of fun today. Stay tuned. No, but really, we're going to have some fun today because some fine folks over at XPPen decided to send me some markers. You guys know that I have a little bit of a problem with marker collection. I love markers. It's one of my go-to tools for illustration. Early on, I was more or less a painter, a gouache guy, and then I moved into graphite. And from there, I moved into watercolor, and I really stayed away from markers until I discovered Copic markers. Copic markers are sort of the industry standard for alcohol-based markers. And I collected Copic markers the best that I could, and because they're about $10 a piece. And then I moved on to Prisma markers, and I started discovering this wonderful world of Copic alternatives. I've got a huge collection ranging from Ohuhu markers, Parku markers, of course Copic markers, Prismacolor markers, Winsor & Newton markers. I've even gone so far as going to the dollar store and the Five and Below to see if they had some offerings, which they did. And recently I purchased some markers from Dick Blick, but I was going back and forth with XPPen because I've reviewed quite a few of their tablets. And they said, hey, would you like to look at the marker offering, alcohol marker offering? Of course, you know, little ears perked up whenever they said markers because I love markers. And I said, sure. So they sent me a collection of their 80 color set. And they said, would you mind doing doing a short little drawing and kind of reviewing our markers. And I said, absolutely. XPPen is one of those great companies that is very friendly, and they're always innovating and expanding their branding across the artistic world. So I'm going to open the package. I'm going to look at the markers, and we're going to, review the packaging. We're going to review the individual markers and the fit and finish and the quality. And of course, we're going to do some drawing because that's, of course, after all, is a drawing channel. Every year, and just as kind of a side note, every year, seasonally, I do a greeting card. I do a couple greeting cards every single year for different people, whether it's their birthday, whether it's our anniversary, whether it's, a get well or whatever. I'll do a one-off greeting card because greeting cards are kind of my fun. I love doing greeting cards. I've done some freelance greeting cards for different greeting card companies, and, doing the one-offs is just my kind of tip of the hat to the people that I give them to, saying I really care. I could go down to the store and buy a greeting card, but at the end of the day, creating something that you can frame and enjoy throughout the duration of your life is something that I'm really into. So I'm going to do some drawing, and we're going to create a greeting card for the season. Of course, it is Christmas season here in the United States, and we're going to review the XPPen marker set. So get ready, sit down, grab a cup of coffee, maybe a donut or a sweet, maybe some chips or something that you can enjoy, and just have some seasonal fun with me, okay? Enjoy the process. And here is the box that the markers came in. It is quite large, as you see. Here's my hand, and whenever it arrived, it had a lot of wonderful noise, which is pretty cool. So, unboxing, pretty simple. I went ahead and cut it open so I wouldn't slice my hand on camera. So here we are. It's their 80-piece set. XPPen shows all the indications. This is the bullet nib and the chisel nib. So you have the bullet nib on one side and the chisel nib on the other. I'm not too much of a chisel nib kind of a guy because most of the time the companies make the chisel nibs a little bit too hard. And I don't think or can recall at any point in time that I have ever used the bullet nib. I'm more or less a brush pen kind of a guy because it emulates watercolor, and I love watercolor. But at the end of the day, this is a viable set of markers that I think should be reviewed and respected. So here we are in the back. It shows the website, the QR codes, not only for their social media but also their website. If there's any issues or anything with the set, here is all of the colors that it indicates. I don't know if there's a PMS reference, PMS being Pantone system. That's kind of the industry standard as far as color matching. You know, every particular company has its own labeling system and numbering system. There isn't really quote unquote a standard unless you go through somebody like Copic. You go ahead and you open up the box. It's a sturdy box, probably made of plastic. The hinges aren't cheap, and it's got an organizing lattice work on the inside that whenever you take out a few, you can see the lattice work on the inside where each marker has its own little house. So I'm going to go ahead and take out one of the markers. Now, as you see, all the numbers, I'm sure from the factory that all the numbers were facing the same direction. I've already opened this just to kind of make sure that everything was in place and there wasn't any embarrassing things that we would run into during the video unboxing. But you know, let's go ahead and grab one of their markers. Let's go ahead and put this right here. And of course the applied decal is nice. There's no tampo printing. It's just a decal, looks like CMYK. Printed right on the front. Like I said, durable. It's got a nice handle to it, and because it is 80 markers, it is quite heavy. I don't know how much it weighs. It's not super light, and each marker has a nice heft to it. This is not a round marker because round markers tend to do, they tend to roll. So like if you had a pen, it'll just roll wherever it wants to. These pens are oblong, so maybe an oval, as you can see. And it's got the color cap designated for the color on the inside and the ink on the inside. And the barrel itself is really nice. These are tampo printed. It's not debossed or anything like that. And then you have the top, which again is tampo printed. Tampo is a printing process for products like this, where they take like an ink sponge and they pop it right on there, and you can get really good printing results printing on products. So it is a glossy finish, and the plastic seems high quality plastic. And I'm looking, and you're seeing, this is going to be the nib side, and this is going to be the chisel side. That is pretty nice, because a lot of times what companies will do is they'll have one side that maybe has a coloration, and this actually has both. This has a gray coloration. See, this side is gray, and then you flip it over, and this side is white. So if you grab the marker, you're working, you grab the marker, you can look instantaneously. I wish they had printing on both sides. That would be nice. You grab it, and then you look to see which has the nib and which has the nib and which has the chisel end. Overall, pulling the cap off, there's a little resistance, not much. Very used to markers. I'm sure if you have any kind of markers in your collection, then you're going to recognize this design language, right? It's not too long, it's not too short. It does a really good job of being in your hand, and overall I think this is exactly what I would expect from a company like XPPen. So I can take it off, and I can see that I'm not getting any bleed from the marker itself, just a little bit, and that's probably from whenever they put it in. And you have a little bit of what's called degassing, and plastics degas after they're made because of the creation process. So a lot of the molecules will come off and degas, and they'll interact with the ink. So whenever you take it off, you'll see a little bit of this. Now, I'm not a huge fan of this, because what inadvertently happens is I'm working, and if I'm working and my finger hits it, what's going to happen? It's going to come right off. And what I'm seeing is based upon that so the white, and you're getting a little bit of bleed off from the item itself. And I'm looking in, and it looks like the plastic, it's good quality plastic, but I'm going to be anxious to see how that's going to fare, whenever I'm working, because I'm looking at some of the other markers and compare and contrast, because that's, here's one of the pieces from one of the big box stores. I think it's Michael's or Hobby Lobby. So you're seeing similar design language, but you know, in terms of the plastic on these is a little bit thicker. So I'm going to be anxious to see how XPPen product fares over the long haul. Again, it doesn't have a lot of weight to it, and weight would equate to amount of ink in that cartridge on the inside. So like I said, I don't typically use the nib. I'll use the chisel side in today's exercise. So let's go ahead and let's look at the colors. They're not really organized in a specific pattern, and all of the words, like I had indicated before, I would have liked to have seen, you know, in initial presentation, I'd like all the words to be facing the same direction, you know, because, you know, here I am working, and even though they've named their particular colors, like you'll have a vermilion red, a coral pink, orange, you know, plain vermilion, fluorescent orange, all those things, you know, are great, but whenever you put them on paper is going to really be the telltale sign of whether or not it's going to be a great marker. Alcohol markers are such that you can blend them, similar to watercolor. So whenever you're working, you you know, you can come back in with a blender, and I'm looking for a blender here, and I don't see warm gray, cool gray. Okay, here we go. So here's the blender. They do include a colorless blender, which you'll go in and you can blend the colors, maybe create some gradients and so on and so forth. And one of the things that this company does, which I have never seen in any of the other marker companies, is they have created a silver. That, folks, is a metallic silver marker. Similar to what you would see. Yeah, it's silver. It is metallic silver. None of the other marker companies, none of them have that. I mean, I've got probably in excess of 1,000 markers at my desk, and I don't see any of them that have included a metallic marker. So here we are. We have a bronze green. So that is probably, it's not a metallic bronze. Let's go ahead and, no, it's just a bronze. So that'd be good, like on metal surfaces and whatnot. And then you have gold. I'm anxious to see gold. Yeah, it is a gold. Look at that, a metallic gold. So that is really cool. Something that I have never seen in any other marker set, and this is fantastic. And they have a huge, they have a whole swath of your gray hues. I'm sorry, your gray tones. And they've got cool gray, green gray, warm gray, cool gray, warm gray. So they've got the grays covered. It looks like they have fluorescence as well. So that's also a really cool thing that some of the other companies aren't doing. They're getting into some fluorescent colors, your fluorescent orange and your yellow. So that's really cool. So I'm anxious to go ahead and pull these out and get started, you know, working on the greeting card. So let's go ahead and do our initial sketch, and we'll start working with the XPPen marker 80 color piece sets. And here's my setup. I like to keep things really simple. So this is basically watercolor paper. Since I am doing a standard sized greeting card, I believe this is 12" by 8", so 8.5 or 8 by 12 or 9 by 12, one of the two. And I've got my tape on the center line right here, and this is going to be my live area, and this will be the back. So the way it folds is going to be like this. So, all right. So this particular card is going to be for my lovely wife. She has a birthday in December, and every single year I typically will do her a couple greeting cards because, you know, of course I love my wife, and I want to make sure that she understands and knows that I'm never too busy to make sure that, you know, she has you know, that she's appreciated. And she loves gnomes. She is a gnome collector. She has a very large collection of gnomes, and it's just something that I enjoy doing. You know, we've actually got a bathroom that is completely covered and filled with gnomes, and, you know, she just loves, you know, collecting them. She's got quite a few of them, you know. So that's what I'm doing. I'm doing doing a fun oh no. So for those of you who are unfamiliar with the process of drawing, I've done quite a few videos. I've got over 600 videos on this channel about the drawing process. And since this is traditional art, I don't have the way of resizing. So I have to basically, I'd like to fill up the entire area. So what you'll see me do is I'll just do basic shapes first to kind of fill up the area that I need to be filled on the piece. And from there, I'll edit here and there, and I'm drawing with a call erase pencil that has the unique ability to be erased very easily, because eventually I'm going to go ahead with the XPPen markers and use those to do the final. But I use this particular eraser, the Factus eraser, and also I do have a plastic eraser which doesn't damage the tooth of the paper, and that's important to note because as you're progressing through your drawing, what inadvertently happens is if you make a mistake or if you need to make a change and you start erasing, what happens is you start erasing and it damages the tooth of the paper itself. And the tooth is the texture and the ability of the paper to take medium. So the tooth basically is like a jag. It's like a little tiny mountains all over the place here. And whenever I'm drawing, I'm putting material in, and depending on how I draw and how I shade will, either damage or fill up that particular tooth. And this is, whenever I'm teaching and I'm talking about tooths of paper and different, understanding whenever you're reading, like if you go on Dick Blick or if you go on michaels.com or one of those sites, and it says, 60-pound cold press, 60-pound hot press. Depending on whether it's hot or cold press will determine the sheen and the tightness or looseness of the tooth. The pound is the thickness, and the higher the number is going to be the thickness of the paper. So if you get 120 pounds, it's going to be thicker than a 60-pound piece of paper. No, you have 30-pound, and then you get to cardstock. But something like this is going to be much thicker because it's designed for watercolor and for markers. So what I'm doing is I'm basically creating a composition, and I'm slowly putting in those elements. And you can see I basically did my basic shape here because I wanted to make sure that I was going to get the entire item in, the entire character. And I always have to remember, underneath all of these clothes, there's anatomy, and I have to recall in my brain. I'm gonna have some really loose PJs. My wife and I, we love coffee. Of course, me being an artist, I love coffee. Keeps me, it's some of my most wonderful moments are sitting and enjoying a cup of coffee while I create. But she loves coffee, and it's funny because, we didn't start out that way. We started out, just being your normal Joe Schmoes and not really understanding the dynamic of what coffee really is in your life, and it becomes more of an experience the older you get. And nowadays, whenever we get up in the morning, it's so funny because we talk about this quite a bit. We get up in the morning, we don't talk to each other. It's very important that you don't talk to each other because you could upset the balance of the world. And I say that with tongue in cheek, but we don't really talk until we get our coffee in us, because that coffee is kind of like the primer for your day, right? And then afterwards, we're good. I remember at one point in time we had some visitors over, and they were staying with us for an extended amount of time, and the wife of the people that were staying, one of the people that were staying with us, she was a talk box in the morning. Oh my gosh. And she would talk. And I think she got up a little bit early and had her coffee, or she was just a morning person, which I completely respect. And she would talk, and my wife and I were sitting there on the couch, and she was talking, and we were looking at each other because she was breaking the no talk rule. You don't talk before coffee. Who do you think you are? So I might wave in the morning, but that is pretty much the extent of the communication between my wife and I whenever we get up in the morning. Now, after coffee, then we have our pleasantries, we say our good mornings, and then, we go about our day, and come around 3 o'clock or so, then we have our coffee. So what I'm doing right now is I talk about putting shapes in, then you build upon those shapes. It's no different than like if you were to build a Lego set. The Lego set starts with a core, then it moves on to the more complex, items, and eventually, you learn to create something really uberly complex by basing it on basic shapes. And that's basically what I'm doing right now. I'm putting in a roadmap for the illustration, right? So let's go ahead and do a little bottom part here. I'm not going to talk the whole time during this particular illustration review, especially during the sketch phase. I'm going to put you guys on time lapse. I'm going to iron out the sketch, and then I'm going to get on to utilizing the XPPen markers so you can get the full review of the process. But I just wanted to get you guys seeing, so I want his hand right here. I'm kind of going down. He's kind of holding something, and then we've got this shirt that comes down like this. It's actually a nightgown, a robe. Okay. Here, and then we've got his back that comes right here. Let's get a little hoodie on. And we're gonna come here. The PJs right there. It's a long shirt. Good. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and put you guys on time lapse, and you can watch the drawing process. You understand, hopefully you understand the basic principle behind how I create an image. And if you don't, there's over 600 videos on this channel that you can see that basically give you an idea of how I look at the world. I look at the world in basic shapes, and then I build on that. I do talk about gesture, I do talk about form, I talk about weight, and that all has to do with movement in the illustration. But a static illustration like this, I'm primarily thinking about character, I'm thinking about character design, and keeping it very light and fun. And, we can have the book or a piece of paper, right? It's a paper. Right. Okay. There we go. Little gloves on. And you can get the basic roadmap. You see the hat here. You see the head here. You can see the coffee here. Fixing to take a sip of that coffee. Right. Let's go ahead and split that mustache down the center to define that form a little bit better. And that's basically what I'm going to be doing over the next probably 15 minutes. It'll probably take me 15 minutes to do. Just got the hand right here, right there, and have that other half of this come to the bottom here. So let me go ahead and get finished with the drawing aspect of it. I'm gonna have that beard kind of covering up that front part. So let's go ahead and do that. I'm gonna go ahead and put you guys on time lapse. the inks, I typically don't go really in depth with the inks because I'm just, I'm not an inker, right? I know that's not an excuse or even a reason why I don't go into the inks, but I really seem to focus on the motion, the characterization. I mean, I'll go back and I'll place a little bit of line weight here and there, variation of line weight. So that's basically thickness and thinness of the lines. And the ink that I'm using comes from these brush pens that I have in my collection. I've got quite a few of them, probably about 25 or 30. And they're waterproof and alcohol resistant. So that's important to know, because if you use a pen that isn't resistant to alcohol, then whenever you utilize these alcohol-based markers, then the second you go over them, it's going to smear that black and it's gonna muddy up your illustration. So hopefully that kind of explains why I do what I do. So what I'm doing right now is variation of line weight. So thickness and thinness of line, depending on where it is on the form. Like folds will have a thicker line because you have two forms coming together. It's similar to if whenever you fold your finger, so your finger is straight and you can see the lines here, but the second you fold them, that line becomes much thicker. So that's basically what I do here, is I thicken the line based upon where it is on the form, so it'll separate that arm from the robe a little bit better. You don't want everything to have the same line weight. So I have the beard come here, and then I'll have the corner of this drink cup. Again, pushes that cup out a little bit. And I'm just having a little bit of fun here and there. Not going too much into detail before I grab the XPPen markers. Okay, a couple wrinkles here and there. Keeping things simple, keeping the line weight simple. Want that nose to come out a little bit further. And to note, whenever you have a form such as a circle or a round shape or an oval, and it overlaps other existing elements in your drawing, whenever it comes to the bottom, since you want to accentuate the shadow, you're going to make that line on the bottom just a little bit thicker. And again, that will push the nose out and separate that form a little bit more. So we're going to have that a little bit darker here. And like I said, I don't really go into the quote-unquote inking process. I just make sure that I have just enough to show what I need. To give you an example, here's one of the past cards that I've done for my wife. Just something simple. This was for Valentine's Day. And the name of my company is Shooting Star Greetings, greeting cards. So if you're ever interested in me doing a custom greeting card like this, definitely contact me. You can email me, mclared@gmail.com, or you can contact me through social media. And Shooting Star Greetings, I've had that company, gosh, for 20 something years. So what I like to do is everything's custom. Everything is by hand. So like the logo itself, I usually come to the back. This is something I just developed on the fly. I was like, I want to do a little logo on the back, and we'll do 22 because that's the year it was created. And then the little star. It comes here all the way through. Yep. And then sometimes I'll do a little drawing on the inside. See? So you will always have my heart. Love you always, Michael. Yes. Just something small. Literally, it's just the extra effort. They talk about relationships and whatnot. And they talk about things that, you know, you do in a marriage that really keeps things spicy. And it's not just physical, it's not just, you know, voice, it's little gestures like this to keep things moving, right? Okay, so what I'll do now, and this of course is for her birthday, like I said before, her birthday's in this month. So make sure everything is nice and dry, and then I come back with the eraser, and I'll get rid of some of that blue line work. And like I said before, erasers like this don't really damage the paper, and that's important because you don't, like I said, want to go in and have issues with damaged paper after you've done your inking. Okay. And I'm not pushing too hard because inadvertently you will remove some of the black. And two, whenever I put the alcohol marker on there, the alcohol marker will actually blend some of that blue into the paper, and it gives it a nice hand-done quality. We got a little bit too much over here. And you can see I do have a glove on. Let's go ahead and do this. And that's merely so I don't get the oils and stuff into the paper. And two, this is, you know, you can utilize watercolor paper, watercolor blocks. I just like using this paper because I like the tooth of it and the thickness of it. So, okay, so now where we're at is actual application of the markers. So, let's go ahead and we're going to start out with warm gray. And it's important, this is something that I do quite a bit. Where's the paper? Some paper. So typically what I'll have is a piece of paper in front or on the side to where I can test out the marker. So I'm going to utilize the chisel end. Okay, I like that color. Try to go really light. Warm gray, warm gray. So you can see the differential in the markers. Now a lot of people will go and they will match. So, you know, they'll sit there and they'll match the color based upon the marking. I like doing that, but at the end of the day, as long as it's close, I'm going to actually be blending these colors with other colors. So we're going to start out with the light. Okay, now we're going to do his beard. Now, whenever I do markers, it's important to note, that I'm going to utilize the white of the paper as well. So you can see that I'm going in, a little bit of beard on the back side there. And I like to put in the shadows first. And you see I'm not going in and just like arbitrarily blocking the color in or the value, because I want to have a little bit of that white showing through, because the beard and the mustache is not a solid one color. It's got a lot of variation in it. And with alcohol markers, the more material that you're putting down on the paper, you're soaking that paper. So be mindful of that, because you don't want your paper to buckle and you don't want to destroy that, like I said, that tooth of the paper that is the base for your ink to go into. Okay, so now that we've got, it's going to have a couple little strands of hair, a couple little highlights right here and there. And I will come back later on with different mediums such as color pencil or acrylic ink, and I will put in highlights. So now, whenever it comes to alcohol-based markers, it's important to know this is pretty standard among a lot of the markers out in the marketplace. The more you put the material in, the more saturated the color or the value will be. So now I'll come back and I'll just place in more value to darken things up. And since this is kind of a mid-tone neutral gray, if I want to push that value a little bit more, I'll come back with a darker gray. And it's nice because they include, it looks like 1, 2, 3, 4. I mean, they have an entire gray set in here. So these are all the grays. That's nice. You know, I've actually purchased other marker sets, just the grays, and sometimes, you know, you'll end up paying $60, $70, $80, $100 for just this many markers, you know. So we started out with that warm gray. So let's go ahead and move to a cooler gray. Okay. Okay, so now put a little bit more value in there. You can see really quick, and those shadows underneath, and you get nice tone and value through the value spectrum. And I'm thinking of light upper right hand side, so I'm thinking as the light goes around that form, we're going to have some shadowing here and there. Right, so we got a little bit of value, darker value underneath because we got that shadow. Okay. And you see I'm not just arbitrarily going in and doing this because it would mess up the curvature of that form of the mustache. So I'm actually going in and putting in the direction of the mustache some of those value lines. You know, and I can even switch and go to the nib if I need a little bit more detail, which I don't typically use the nib. That's why I was talking about the brush marker, which I love brush markers. I have a huge collection of brush markers because whenever I'm using the brush markers, I'm painting, and I'm using the tip and I'm using the side, and those aspects of the brush marker really are good. Okay, so let's go ahead and we're going to do his hat. So we're going to keep the grays out because I am actually going to utilize those grays here in a moment. So we're going to go to a lighter hue, a pale blue, and we're going to block in the entire hat. Again, you can see that I'm not just going in and doing this because I want, you know, drawing with markers is one of those things that you kind of have to learn. And it's not unlike drawing, it's not unlike shading, it's not unlike painting. You're always conscious of the form, and you can see how I've drawn the lines, and that actually comes out toward me, and then it curves around and then goes away from me. So you can see how I'm already thinking about that in my shading technique. You know, even going so far as maybe as I'll put in some of the darker lines to accentuate those folds, right? It's very therapeutic, and I say that because I use art a lot of times, especially whenever it comes to my job, because I have a very high stressful job. I'm dealing with different types of people, different types of you know, properties, whether it's, you know, working for Disney, working for Warner Brothers, and you have all these established properties, and being able to create artwork within the confines of a lot of the rules is stressful because you want to first, you know, do well, but also you want to keep doing what you're doing. And I use art a lot of times, especially you know, like warm-ups and stuff like that, to alleviate stress. And you know, markers again are a very fast medium that puts down very quick color, and you can see in very short order, you know, you can put down a lot of material and have some fun. Isn't that what it's really about? You know, being inspired, being inspired is something that comes on a lot of times, and we as illustrators, artists, graphic designers, you know, have our happy zones. You know, oh, I'm going to get on the computer, I'm going to do this, I'm going to get on my tablet and do this. And there is a separation, I think, that we don't sometimes recognize, that separation of technology. And even though, you know, the digital environment is wonderful, you have a lot of capability and whatnot, drawing with markers and traditional stuff is wonderful. I love traditional artwork. It is wonderful. Traditional, working in paint, you know, I also paint, working in markers. So far, what I'm noticing, I'm not getting any bleed off. I'm getting good saturation from the marker. So far, the marker's really good. It's not tiring my hand. It doesn't slip out of my hand. Again, you know, I go back to the whole thing of chisel versus brush. And I am 100% a brush marker kind of guy. So, you know, I'm having to tilt it on its side and give it a brush and utilize it like a brush. So let's go ahead. So this is, what color is this? This is pale light blue. Pale baby blue. Let's go ahead and compare and contrast these two colors. One. Okay, so this is the baby blue is going to be a little bit lighter, which I like. So now I can come back and I can actually fill in. And I'm not going to completely fill in because I like, again, that watercolor feel. It gives that watercolor brush feeling to it. And look, you can see as I put that nice pale blue, it mixes in with the other blue hue very nicely. And I'm not freaking out if I make a mistake, right? You can tell that I'm outside the lines here and here and here, and I'm not freaking out. And that's important to note because I'm having fun. I'm enjoying myself. You know, it's warm inside. And you can see the colors are starting to act like watercolors as they bleed into that paper, and I love that. Love it. Love it. Okay. Nice saturation. We're not getting any pullback. Pullback meaning pulling some of the media off of the paper, such as the black. So the black ink marker that I used is working out really well. Okay, so now I'm going to go to a darker blue because I want to put some stripes in here. Let's find a darker blue. Yeah. So I'm going to determine, so this is called road mapping in my brain, how I'm going to determine what I'm going to do. So I can already see, like I forgot to put a stripe in here. So let's go ahead back here. There we go. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and put in this darker hue to give it like a stripe. And I'm being a little bit less careful now because I want that to be a stripe. We'll do the same thing up here. And I'm not like forcing, because I want the, you can see like right here, I'm getting some nice bleed in. And I'm still going in the direction. And I'm not filling it in totally. Letting the alcohol do its job. I can definitely tell that it's putting out some ink, which is really nice. So these are not cheap dime store markers. You definitely can rely upon them to get the job done. Very nice. Go back. Yeah, they're literally acting like watercolor, and that's really nice. I like that a lot. See, they're bleeding in, going in. Okay. So let's go ahead and put these back. I'm sure you can organize your set the way you want to. Okay, we're gonna give him a red coat. So this is coral red, more like a coral's kind of got some pink hue to it. So again, I'm gonna do the same thing again. I'm gonna come back. Okay, so maybe a shadow right here, and I'm going in the direction of the fabric, putting in some of those darker, right, and I'm leaving that area a little bit lighter. So let's go ahead and do inside here, inside here. Okay, even if I want to go so far as do something like this, and to draw that preliminary shadow in. Okay, and then what I'll do is I'll have just some little highlights here and there. Okay. A little side note, once you've got that color blocked in the way you want, I do have a light pink, so I'll come back with the lighter pink hue. I'll place in, here we go, get rid of some of those highlights. And what you can do, okay, so you're like, well, that's kind of boring. So you come back, and you might make that stripies. So I need to make that, because I see a mistake I made. So let's go ahead and do this. Okay. I forgot to put my stripes on my PJs. There we go. So then, let's go ahead and block in, yes, coral red. We're going to block in the remainder, and I'm going to show you something really quick that you'll enjoy. So, okay, so we're going to do a little bit darker of a red here. Okay, this is cherry or pink, cherry pink. Excuse me. So we're going to come here. We're going to just start putting in some of those values because I want the stripes to be there. Okay. There's like a shadow right there. There we go. And you can see I'm going right over the existing color, and what that does is it darkens it. It makes it like it's got the fabric itself has a shadow on it. And if you want to actually put shadows in, what I do is I utilize a purple, excuse me, a purple hue value. Where's the purple? Like a lavender. This might be too dark. Yeah, lavender. This actually might be too dark. We're going to see. Okay, so we come back in, and the lavender will act as like a cool hue. So we'll put a shadow on the bottom here. See that? We'll come here. Nice shadow on the bottom. Nice shadow here. I don't like using black ever, except for outlining. And I very rarely use black at all because black is unless I'm doing black and white, obviously, because black it's a color killer, the same as white. White's a color killer. So let's go ahead, we're going to put shadow on the bottom, and now we're going to use a mid-tone gray to give like a shadow on the side here.
Okay. And we could do that pretty much anywhere else we want, as long as it's a cool shadow on the bottom here. Okay, got a shadow here. So on and so forth. And that's just basically, I call it housekeeping. Yeah, housekeeping. Housekeeping! Okay. So in the spots, I want those to be red. So let's go back to our coral red, which is the base hue of that. Okay. And then just putting stuff in now. That's all I'm doing really. So far, I'm really enjoying these markers. Of course, I am a marker guy. You might have a different experience if you're not a marker guy or gal. Right? Patience, experimentation. Find out what works for you. You know, I was originally a Copic marker loyalist, truist, whatever you want to call it. And I haven't switched, but I am much more open-minded to companies like XPPen and some of the other people out there, because they do have a great offering and they make a good product, right? I'm getting a little bit, and I'm noticing like stuff like this. I don't like this, but it's basically because whenever you put the marker back in, it marks on the inside, and it you know, it doesn't create a mess, but it definitely creates a look and a sheen. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to put you guys on time lapse, because I want you to see the process, and then we'll do a final wrap up in the end. Okay? And here's where I landed with the finished illustration. So basically what I do now is I go and I take off my painter's tape. Voila! It's important to use painter's tape, because if you don't, you'll mess up the tooth of the paper and you'll end up tearing it. Even this tape's a little bit too strong. This is called frog tape, so I don't typically like to use that. But you can see, go ahead and put this to the side. Here's the finished product. What do I think about the markers overall? I think they're good. I think they're, you know, XPPen makes a good product. They make good tablets. This is kind of a foray into the traditional world. Overall, they were good. Some of the colors weren't really indicative in terms of what the cap said. You know, case in point, where's the one that I had? This one right here. Canary yellow. I think that's the one that I had. Canary yellow. I was very surprised of how orange it was. No, that matches pretty good. You can see that it's pretty close, and like I said, I don't stress out too much about that, just as long as it's in the ballpark. Where's the one that I was so surprised at? No. It has completely flown the coop. No, it's not that one. It was a cool Oh, yellowish red. What is this one? Deep yellow? Yes. So this is marked as deep yellow. You can see that's not even close. And then whenever I put it on there, that is not even, I mean, not even close. That's not deep yellow. This is orange. This needs to be remarked as orange. And whenever I go to the orange, let's go ahead and compare and contrast the actual orange. And this is more saturated, of course. You know, and this is, that could be, I mean, that's in the same ballpark. This is not, that other color was by no means deep yellow. So I think as the first swing into the marker genre, I think they did pretty good. You know, I'd give them probably a B. I would like to test out their brush markers. Maybe that's something that will happen here in the future. But overall, I think the illustration turned out really good. And typically what I'll do as a final step, I'll come here and I will actually fold the paper, making sure I don't crease it too bad. And you can see, as a keepsake, you have a nice little doodah that can be utilized to frame, and whenever she receives it, hopefully she'll give it a thumbs up. So that's all I had for you guys today. Hopefully you didn't tune out too bad. You got an understanding of what this particular product is, the XPPen marker. In terms of price point, I'm not really sure how much these cost. I think they're $40. I'm going to go ahead and punch in the website, XPPen. Let's go ahead, let's see what they have. XPPen.com, products. Okay, accept. Let's look. They have a lot of tablets. XPPen is really good at showing their products in a positive light. Great marketing campaigns. You know, they do a lot of things. They've got innovations. Here's their marker right here. So we're going to learn more about their markers. You can see it's a specialty XPPen marker. It looks like they've got a myriad of different, see, bullet nib, brush nib, which I don't have. I didn't have a chance to review that one. Maybe that'll be a possibility. They have 24, 36, and 80 color. It says fade and smudge resistant, bright colors, which they are, alcohol base, eco-friendly. Show you a different myriad of ways to utilize them. And whenever we go to the buy now, this is right off their website. So their 24 colors is $19.99, marked down from 24. Their 36 is $29, marked down from 34, and their 80 set is $49, marked down from 54. So 80 alcohol markers for $50 right now. So type of nib, soft nib. Their soft nib set, which is their brush marker, you're looking at $95 as opposed to the lower price point, which is the hard nib. This would be considered hard nib, which is the chisel and the harder nib there. And it looks like their soft nib in 80 colors is $95. And that will definitely be a key factor whenever you go to purchase stuff. Because if you compare and contrast other company marker sets, they're expensive. They being the other companies, you know, compare and contrast, even at full retail, $100 for 80 markers, that's just over $1 a piece. That's pretty daggum cheap in my book. So hopefully you guys got something with this illustration. Again, very bright colors, and of course the final review on the XPPen marker will probably come, you know, after I've had them for a year and I've used them extensively, because I love doing stuff like this, traditional artwork and whatnot. So hopefully you guys enjoyed. Like and subscribe if you like what you see, and as always, go and chase, capture, and draw those horizons. See you next time. Bye.